Are all cultures equal? That is, after all, the taken-for-granted premise behind the widely accepted notion of multiculturalism, a belief that has single-handedly led to the infusion of countless cultures into the West. I was reminded about this question while recently thinking about the passing of Pope Francis. I recalled how once, while apologizing to indigenous peoples for all the horrible things Christians did to them throughout the centuries, the late Pope declared that, quote, "Never again can the Christian community allow itself to be infected by the idea that one culture is superior to others." This widely held position is very dangerous, specifically because it leads to relativism and the abnegation of truth. The problem is that for most Western people today, the word culture conjures up superficial differences, exotic dress or food. In reality, however, cultures are nothing less than entire and distinct worldviews with their own unique sets of right and wrong, often rooted in a religion or philosophy. Indeed, for some thinkers, such as T.S. Eliot, culture and religion are inextricably linked and, quote, "different aspects of the same thing," he wrote, adding, "Culture may even be described simply as that which makes life worth living. No culture can appear or develop except in relation to a religion. We can see a religion as the whole way of life of a people," his emphasis, "from birth to the grave, from morning to night, and even in sleep. And that way of life is also its culture." That's from T.S. Eliot's book, Notes Towards the Definition of Culture. Similarly, for Anglo-French historian Hilaire Belloc, quote, "Cultures spring from religions. Ultimately, the vital force which maintains any culture is its philosophy, its attitude toward the universe. The decay of a religion involves the decay of the culture corresponding to it." We see this most clearly in the breakdown of Christendom today. He made these observations nearly a century ago. What, one wonders, would he say today? At any rate, the point here is that cultures bring much more than, say, the convenience of having Thai cuisine down the street. Which leads to another important fact. All those cultural traits prized by the modern West today, religious freedom, tolerance, humanism, gender, as in male and female only, equality, did not develop in a vacuum, but are rather byproducts of Christian principles and ethics, which over the course of some 2,000 years have had a profound influence on Western epistemology, society, and, of course, culture. While these values are now taken for granted and seen as universal, there's a reason why they were born and nourished in Christian, not Muslim, Buddhist, Hindu, or Confucian nations. Even if one were to accept the widely entrenched narrative that the Enlightenment is what led to Western progress, it is alone telling that this Enlightenment arose in Christian as opposed to any of the many non-Christian nations that I just mentioned. All this is missed by those ignorant of the spiritual and intellectual roots of Western civilization. Many secular people in the West arrogantly see themselves as the culmination of all human history, enlightened thinkers who have left all cultural and religious baggage behind, with concern only for that which matters, namely the material. For them, all religions and cultures are superficialities that will eventually be shed off by all the peoples of the world. The non-Western world, according to this way of thinking, is destined to develop just like the West, which is no longer seen as a distinct culture, but rather as the end point of all cultures. The folly of such thinking is especially on sharp display in the context of Islam and Muslims, who in this new paradigm are seen as embryonic Westerners. Whatever a Muslim may say, calls for jihad, hate for infidels, surely deep down inside he values secularism and appreciates the need to practice Islam privately, respect religious freedom, gender equality, and so on. So goes this thinking. Thus he is made in our image, except, of course, we forget the roots of our image. In reality, the Muslim has his own unique and ancient worldview and set of principles, his own culture, which in turn prompt behavior that is deemed radical by Western standards, which are falsely assumed to be universal standards. As T.S. Eliot, who obviously gave these questions much thought, wrote, quote, "Ultimately, antagonistic religions must mean antagonistic cultures, and ultimately, religions cannot be reconciled." Portraying what at root is a byproduct of Christian teaching as universal, and then applying it to an alien culture like Islam, is doomed to failure. The idea that Muslims can be true to their religion and yet naturally fit into Western society is false and built on an equally false premise, that Christianity somehow also had to moderate itself to fit into secular society. In fact, Christian principles, which are so alien to Islam, were fundamental to the creation of the West. So what then of multiculturalism, this word that the West is supposed to continue celebrating and embracing wholeheartedly? As seen, behind it is the idea that all cultures are equal, and none, certainly not Christian or Western culture, is superior to others. Again, to quote the dearly departed Pope. In reality, multiculturalism is another euphemistic way of undermining and replacing the truths of a religion and its culture, namely Christianity, with relativism. Earlier Western peoples understood that capitulating to a foreign culture was tantamount to suicide. Thus, and to quote again from T.S. Eliot, quote, "It is inevitable that we should, when we defend our religion, be at the same time defending our culture, and vice versa. We are obeying the fundamental instinct to preserve our existence." This again is from his book, Notes Towards the Definition of Culture. One anecdote well captures this clash of cultures. After the British colonial powers banned sati, the Hindu practice of burning a widow alive on her husband's funeral pyre, Hindu priests complained to British Governor Charles James Napier that sati was an important part of their culture, and therefore their right, to which he replied, quote, "Be it so. This burning of widows is your custom. Prepare the funeral pyre. But my nation has also a custom. When men burn women alive, we hang them, and confiscate all their property. My carpenters shall therefore erect gibbets on which to hang all concerned when the widow is consumed. Let us all act according to our national customs." Rather refreshing, right, when men used to talk like that? By the way, being opposed to multiculturalism, that is to say, relativism, is in no way the same thing as being opposed to other races or ethnicities, but rather being opposed to social disunity and chaos. After all, racially homogeneous but culturally heterogeneous nations are much more fractured than the reverse. One need look no further than to the United States, where leftist and rightist whites often abhor one another. Or look to the Middle East, where Muslims and Christians are largely homogeneous, racially, ethnically, and linguistically, but where the former are ruthlessly persecuting the latter, exclusively over religion. In short, there's nothing wrong if a nation's citizenry is composed of different races and ethnicities, but only if they share in the same worldview, the same priorities, the same ethics, the same sense of right and wrong. In a word, the same culture.